Stephanie. Stephanie Stevens! Yes, how can I help you? Sorry, you were served. Handing over the envelope, he turned and left. Oh, God, I can't believe this is happening. I hold the envelope in my shaking hands, tears streaming down my face. I know I screwed up. I know he's angry. I just didn't think it would happen. That it could lead to this. I have to stop this. I have to talk to him. I have to make things right. A few days earlier, I just finished my day's work on my laptop. Now that I work from home 3 days a week, I have much more free time to take care of my family. But today, right now, I have an hour and a half before my daughter comes home. 2.5 hours until my husband returns. It was game time. I can't believe I'm about to do this. I ran to quickly take a shower, trying not to get my hair wet. I can't believe I let Hunter talk me into a mutual live sex chat in real time. Since he left our office 6 months ago, we have kept in touch, first on Facebook and then on WhatsApp. We always flirted in the office, although nothing serious. As soon as we got online, neither of us could resist talking about fantasy sexting. I never wondered where his wife was when we were online, and he never asked about the state of my affairs, so to speak. It was exciting. Hunter tried to get me to send him nude photos. On the other hand, he sent me a lot of naked photos of himself. But as nice as the visual aids were, it was his words that drove me crazy. I would never use my cell phone to send him text messages or photos because it was a company phone. I didn't want to risk my job if, God forbid, my daughter or husband read or saw something inappropriate. Jumping out of the shower, I quickly dried myself with a towel and touched up my makeup. I only wore my thick white terry robe. I skipped back to my home office, excited and nervous at the same time. I configure my settings to have no entries and turn on in time for the designated connection. Hello, my sexy angel. You look beautiful as always. Hunter, I can't believe we're doing this. I'm so nervous. Look, my hands are shaking. Steph, this excites me even more. Well, it's not fair. You can see me shirtless from the waist up, but you're covered. Come on, angel. Open this robe a little. Let me look. Licking my lips and throwing my head back, I close my eyes and slowly run a long red nail along the slit of my robe. I exposed right breast. The tips of my areolas were as hard and long as the tip of my little finger. I heard Hunter groan. I smiled and slowly opened my eyes. His eyes looked wide, hungry, and I could see his hand moving up and down outside the camera. Hunter slowly leaned back in his office chair to allow more of his body into the camera's view. Get up, Stephanie. Show me your ass. I complied with his request and pushed my chair back, turning seductively, lifting the back of my robe, swaying my ass from side to side. Slowly showing my cheeks, I heard him groan. Yes, sir. Now bend over and spread your cheeks. No, I said, turning around and throwing the robe back over my bare ass. Now I sit again, but leave my robe open in the front, my legs tightly clenched. You're no fun. You're such a tease. Come on, show me how you satisfy yourself. I slowly run my fingers up and down my thighs. Oh, here comes Angel. Oh, look at this. You're so damn hot. At that very moment, I felt my chair lean back, and it seemed to me that I was going to fall backwards. My eyes opened wide, my hands grabbed the armrests. My legs gave way, trying to maintain my balance. I heard the words shouted, "Hello, bastard!" My eyes were now filled with horror as I saw my husband standing over me, one hand gripping the back of the reclining chair and his other hand holding my laptop. Screams into the video feed, then launches the laptop across the room, smashing it into the far wall. My chair tips over onto the floor, my ass now in the air, my knees above my head, stunned for a moment, but still getting to her feet as quickly as possible. Just in time to see my office door slam shut as my husband Mark ran out of the room. I tie my belt and run down the corridor. Not fast enough, only to see from the porch the taillights of my husband's car coming out of the end of the street. Oh no, no, no. What did I do by not closing the front door? In desperation, I run to the kitchen to get my mobile phone. I rest my elbows firmly on the table, trying to stop the trembling in my hands. I grab my cell phone and try to call and get no answer. Then I send a message with no response. Looking at the time, I realize that my daughter will be home soon, and I decide to wipe away my tears, clean myself up, and try to pull myself together. I quickly pull on a pair of sweatpants and an old baggy shirt. As soon as I leave the bathroom, I hear the front door open. "Mom, I'm home." I meet my daughter in the hallway. She looks me in the face and immediately understands that something is wrong. "What happened, Mom? You don't look good. Your eyes are so red." "It's okay, honey. I just had a hard day." "I'm not feeling well. How are you doing, honey? Did you have a good day?" "It's okay. Why don't you sit down and relax, Mom? Would you like me to make you a cup of tea?" "Don't worry. Daddy will be home soon to look after you." Just hearing these words made me cry again. "Maybe I'll lie down for a minute. I'd love to have some tea. Thank you, honey." Deciding to lie down on the living room couch, curled up in the fetal position, I heard our daughter Tiffany making me tea in the kitchen. What have I done? Have I really ruined my marriage? Just imagine what my daughter would think if she knew what was really going on. "Hold your tea, Mom. Wow, you look really tired. Maybe I should text my dad and tell him to buy pizza for dinner. I'll let him know you're not feeling well." Tiffany was already texting her father before I could react. "Dad says he will bring pizza." I can't believe he responded to her message right away. Did he block me on his phone? I'm glad he at least answered her. I know he's coming home again, but what will that bring? I don't think he would bring this up in front of his daughter. I can only imagine what he's thinking. Probably the fact that he came and interrupted the home video version of a full-length romance. I decided to quickly go back to my home office and clean up the broken parts of my laptop. I grabbed the main piece and throw it in the trash can in the garage. I returned with a broom and dustpan and removed the shards. I put my office chair back. I cried again, thinking about what I had done. I needed to find something to cover the hole in the drywall so my daughter wouldn't ask questions. By leaning my back against the far wall and pushing with my feet, I was able to move the filing cabinet just enough to cover the hole. I heard Tiffany run downstairs from the top floor as the front door opened and closed. From the corridor, I heard them talking in the kitchen. "Hello, my dear. How was your day? Do you need to do any homework this evening?" "Yes, I have a little homework. Thank you for buying the pizza. Mom isn't feeling well. Why don't you take the pizza to your room and do your homework? Then you and I can watch TV tonight." "Okay, sounds interesting." I quickly ducked into the bathroom to check my appearance before talking to Mark. When I left and headed to the kitchen, no one was there. I opened the pizza box and looked at the pizza. I felt too sick to eat. I stood there listening and heard the sound of the TV coming from the game room in the basement. I hesitantly crept down the stairs. Mark was watching TV with his back turned to me. I reluctantly tiptoed around to his side and sat down on the edge of the sofa. He didn't take his eyes off the TV. I sat in silence for a few moments, tears streaming down my face again. Hoarse, the words, "Mark, can we talk?" He turned off the TV, then slowly turned and looked at me, his face looking furious, but there were tears in his eyes. "Mark, I know how you must feel. You don't know anything about how I feel right now." He spoke quietly, trying not to growl. His face was beet red and drool was flying into my face. My body shook. I had never seen Mark get angry or raise his voice at me, and now twice in one day. "Now leave me alone. I'll talk to you when I'm okay and ready." I quickly jumped up, crying, and ran to the first floor and then to the upstairs bedroom. I crawled into bed in the fetal position and cried and cried. A minute later, Tiffany poked her head through the door. "Mom, are you okay? Should I call Dad?" "No, honey. No, I'm fine. I just need to get some sleep. Go downstairs and watch a movie with him." I had a terrible night's sleep, tossing and turning, thinking about what I had done. Mark must have been sleeping downstairs. In the morning, I put on a robe and sneak around the house, trying to find him. It soon became obvious that he had already left for work. The pizza was in the refrigerator and the coffee was ready. I poured myself a cup while sitting on the kitchen island, grabbed my cell phone and sent him a text message. "Forgive me. I love you. Thanks for the coffee. Have a nice day at work." I thought to myself, did he even go to work today? I didn't even see him change clothes or take a shower. I myself had to work in the office today before waking up my daughter. I had another good cry in the shower, then went out and called Tiffany to get up for breakfast, checking that there was no reply message on my cell phone. I don't dare even think about going to any website or contacting Hunter in any way today or ever. I just wanted to leave it all behind, like the broken parts of that laptop. When I came downstairs, Tiffany was eating a bowl of cereal. I poured myself another cup of coffee. "Are you feeling better, Mom?" "A little, thank you. Did you and Dad like the film?" "Yes, we watched Blade Runner 2049. It was great, Mom. You should have seen it." After the movie, I went to bed, and Dad stayed to watch the sports news. "I assume he has already left for work?" "Yes, honey, you better go to school yourself. Do you need a ride?" "Thanks, Mom. And don't worry about my lunch. I'm going to grab some cold pizza." She started rummaging through the refrigerator. "This is not a suitable dinner, young lady, but I'm not in the mood and I'm in a hurry, so let's go." We were busy at work, and it was a gift from God. It took my mind off things, and then, around lunchtime, the inevitable happened. A phone call. "Stephanie Stevens speaking. How can I help you?" "Hey, Steph, it's me, Hunter. What happened? Are you okay? I couldn't reach you, I don't know your mobile phone number, and you weren't online." I held the phone away from my ear as if it were on fire. I had a look of shock on my face, and I pressed the phone to my head again, whispering into the phone, "Hunter, don't ever call me or try to contact me again." After hanging up, I ran from my desk to the ladies' room as quickly as I could before bursting into tears again. Having come to my senses, I made myself a cup of coffee. I checked to see if there are any messages from Mark, but there are none. I sent another message. "Please, Mark, I love you. Can we talk?" Returning to my office, I smiled at my colleague. I sat back down and returned to today's work. That evening, returning home, I decided to stop at the supermarket to buy ingredients to prepare a delicious dinner. At that moment, I realized that I myself had not eaten for more than 24 hours. I decided to make chicken parmesan for dinner, which they both loved. I returned home and started cooking. Then I freshened up a little in the bathroom. There was a damp towel and some of Mark's clothes from yesterday on the floor. This means he either snuck back into the house after we left this morning or didn't go to work at all. Either way, he was definitely avoiding me. Soon after this, the daughter arrived. She was very excited about the good marks she got on her math test. I hugged her tightly. "Oh, Tiffany, I'm so proud of you. And Dad, of course. It was nice to see her in such a playful and good mood. It improved my mood and distracted me from extraneous thoughts." By the time dinner was over, Mark was still not home, which was very unusual. I sent him another text message, but there was no response. My daughter and I decided to eat anyway. It wasn't that I was hungry. I ended up just picking at my food, taking a couple of bites. Tiffany asked me where Dad was. I said I wasn't sure. He seemed to be a little late tonight. She took out her phone and sent him a message, getting a response immediately. It was starting to get annoying. "Dad says to keep his dinner warm. He'll be home in half an hour." "Mom, are you guys fighting?" "No, not a fight, honey. Just a little situation we're trying to sort out. You don't have to worry about it." Mark finally walked through the door and we both walked towards him. He was carrying a bag from the electronics store. "Dad, are you home? What did you buy us?" "I bought a new laptop to replace your mother's laptop." I shouted to him, "You know, I dropped it on the floor. It was nice of you to replace it, Mark." "Well, actually, now it will be a kind of central family laptop. Your mother can work here, in the kitchen, on the island, where it will be stored all the time. Now, none of us have anything to hide, do we? Besides, I think we'll turn Mom's office into another bedroom." As he spoke, every word pierced me like a dagger. I lowered my eyes to the floor and answered, "Good idea, honey. I'll probably be a lot more productive being here instead of hiding in that room. Plus, I'll be closer to the coffee maker." I laughed nervously, making the situation seem light-hearted. "It doesn't matter to me. I have my own tablet to do my homework, Dad. I should probably do it now anyway." She went to her room, and Mark began setting up his new laptop. I took his food out of the oven and placed it on the plate next to him. He started eating and working on the laptop at the same time, then looked at me and asked, "Have you eaten?" I ate a few pieces. "I'm not very hungry, Mark. Can we talk?" "Give me an hour and then we can talk." "Okay, Mark. I'll leave you alone to eat and set up the computer. I don't feel well. I think I'll go take a bath and then come down and make us some tea." He didn't even look at me. He just shrugged. Once upstairs, I turned on the water in the bathtub, then went to my daughter's room to ask her if she needed to use the toilet first. When I looked in on her, she asked me if everything was okay. I said, "Yes, everything is fine." After the bath, I went to the kitchen to make tea. Mark's plates were in the dishwasher. He had already gone into the basement, leaving the computer standing ominously on the island with sleep mode on. I carried 2 cups of hot tea into the playroom. It was the moment of truth. I put the tea in front of us and sat staring at him. I can't say for sure what he watched on TV. I just tried my best not to cry. After several minutes of silence, he turned off the TV and turned to me. "Stephanie, I don't owe you anything, but I'm going to do you a big favor." "I'll tell you what I know." "Well, I'll tell you some of what I know anyway. I'm holding back the other parts to see if you're lying to me." There was a long pause as he looked at me, and I began to cry, folding my hands in my lap as I submissively lowered my eyes. "On Sunday evening, when our daughter was feeling bad and she called you, we both ran to see what was going on, you may remember. Realizing that she was sick and had vomited, you took her to the bathroom. I changed the sheets on her bed, knowing that you would take her to the shower. I stayed away so as not to interfere. As I walked back down the stairs, I realized that the door to your office where you worked was wide open. In all this chaos, you forgot to turn off your computer." "Oh God, no! You couldn't see—" "Yes, Stephanie. Before my eyes on your laptop, there was a photograph of a man with dignity in his hand. So I sat down in the chair and decided to read the conversations on your WhatsApp. Please, Mark, let me explain." "You will have your chance," he said with a stoic expression on his face. "Then I heard you calling me. I went and helped you with Tiffany. I suggested that she sleep with you in our bed so that you could look after her, and I would go to sleep in her room." In that moment, I knew I didn't want to feel your body next to me in bed that night, or any night in the future for that matter. When you asked me to get her a drink, I slipped back to your laptop to gather the information I needed so I could access it later and finish my investigation. "No, no, no!" I cried so hard that I could hardly breathe. "Later, when I saw you both sleeping peacefully, I went back to read everything. Then I went to Facebook, your story, looked at everything I could find. I even checked your mobile phone. There was no password on it. Obviously, there was nothing there because it was a work phone. At least you knew enough not to make that mistake. Regardless, there was definitely a mountain of information on the computer." He sat staring at me for a moment, then continued. "Using a small zip drive, I saved all the information for the future. That's how I found out about your plans to get into videography. So I decided to come home early and see if you could make it through to catch you before the show. But I'm a little late. The show has already started. Anyway, I also learned a lot about your boyfriend, Hunter. He isn't my boyfriend. Speak quietly and wait your turn. As I already said, I found out about his wife and children. His wife is a nice woman and has a Facebook page with all sorts of information, even about where they live. Once I send some of these pictures and conversations you've been having, I'm sure he'll be too busy saving his own skin from a divorce to play sex chat." Hearing the word divorce, I began to cry desperately, falling to my knees in front of him. "Please don't leave me. Please, Mark, don't give up on us. Let me try to explain." "Keep your voice down if you don't want this to be a 3-way conversation with our daughter." "Okay, now it's your turn. Tell me everything from the beginning, and don't you dare lie to me. I know a lot." Okay. I'm sorry. Hunter, as you probably already know, worked in our office about 6 months ago. He often flirted with me at work. There was never anything, I swear to you, Mark, nothing, I promise. It was always just a flirting conversation. We We actually had lunch one day, but Katie from the office was with us. You can ask her. Nothing happened. She was there. The three of us were there. After crying for so long, I took a shaky breath, then continued. Then, on his last day at the company, he said we should stay in touch even though he was moving to another state. So we exchanged Facebook accounts. I didn't give him my phone number. I swear we chatted on Facebook Messenger from time to time. I thought of him as a friend who was easy to talk to. Then one day he suggested that we go to the WhatsApp website, where we could correspond, talk, and he sent me a link. As I continued my confession, I could no longer maintain eye contact and stared at the floor. I think now that he probably wanted to leave Facebook because it was a tool that his wife used. That's when I probably made my first, maybe second mistake, and as you read, the flirting began. Only this time it's sexier and more graphic. Hunter wanted me to send photos, but I felt anxious, scared. I also didn't want anyone to have pictures of me. It was getting out of control. Deep down I knew it was wrong, but I was lost in my fantasies. Then he talked me into video chatting instead, and no, I'm not putting all the blame on him. I was an idiot for going along with this, somehow convincing myself that it was harmless because I wasn't physically with him. How stupid of me. I shared my body with him whether he was in the room or not. I'm sorry, Mark, and I'm so sorry. I would do anything to take it back, and I will do anything to make it right, Mark. Please forgive me. You have no idea how shockingly abandoned I felt at that moment. I thought I knew you. I bared my soul to you. Still, I had to hold myself together in front of our daughter and in front of you until I had all the facts. I feel rejected. You lied to me, and now you expect me to sacrifice my dignity by erasing these memories. Stephanie, you cheated on me. It was no different than me walking down the stairs in the middle of the night and you dancing naked in front of him while he sat on the couch watching. Your flirting is an emotional destruction of our relationship and an attack on my very masculinity. No, Mark. Please, please, please. Let me fix this. Please. It's over. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Stephanie, from now on, this computer stays in the kitchen where you do your work, and your phone also stays on this kitchen table. There will be no secrets. There is no reason for any of these devices to ever be locked. In the morning, I'm going to go to your work, and you're going to open your computer. We'll take a few minutes just to see what's there before your boss comes in. Of course, Mark, no matter what you say, there's nothing there, I promise. Oh, and I forgot that Hunter called me at work the other day over lunch, and I told him I never want to talk to him again. I told him that, Mark. Don't worry, I'll take care of him. Mark, please don't do anything that might be illegal. I need you. Our daughter needs you. We'll talk about this again. I need some clothes for work tomorrow. I'll put things here in the basement to change. Also, toiletries. Mom? Dad? Are you guys watching TV down there? I jumped up from the floor and began to wipe away my tears, turning off the lamp on the end table to try to dim the light so that she could not see my face. Tiffany walked down the stairs and then threw herself on the couch between us, like teenagers do. What are we watching? The three of us sat there quietly and watched the movie. When the movie ended, Tiffany fell asleep in my arms. I tried to wake her, but she didn't move, either in deep sleep or pretending. Mark turned off the TV and then walked over and hugged her. He picked her up and carried her up the stairs to her room. She may have been 13, but she was petite, just like me. Her long brown tail swayed from side to side as he carried her easily in his large, strong arms. I felt a slight pang of jealousy as I followed them. I didn't know if Mark would ever hold me in his arms again once his anger subsided. They continued down the hallway and I turned into the master bedroom, grabbed my nightie, and went into the bathroom to get ready for bed. When I came out, my husband was standing with some clothes for tomorrow and went into the bathroom to get his toiletries. Please, Mark, don't do this. Please sleep in bed with me tonight. Stephanie, I don't think you have any idea of the shock I felt when I read everything and then saw what you did. My eyes read my wife's words. I looked at my wife's actions. However, my mind was trying to figure out who this person was. This is not my wife, my Stephanie. In that split second, the woman I knew disappeared, and I was living with a woman I didn't know. Mark, please, it's me, your wife. I was stupid, but it's me. I'm here. I'm so sorry I was a fool. Please forgive me. I've learned my lesson. Let me make things right. I'm crying profusely. Snot is flowing from my nose. He simply continued with his task, then left and went downstairs. I lay down on the bed and cried until I fell asleep. I woke up to the sound of my alarm clock, then got up and walked down the corridor. She knocked on her daughter's bedroom door, opened it, and told her to get ready. I slipped downstairs and checked to see if Mark was in the basement. He left for work. Just like the day before, coffee was already brewed in the kitchen. I made toast, cereal, and juice for Tiffany, and then started making her lunch for school. "Good morning, Mom." Tiffany sat with me and ate her breakfast. After a few moments, she asked, "Mom, is Dad still angry with you?" "I guess so, but we're working on it. Don't worry. Everything will be just fine." "Don't worry, Mom. Dad has been angry with me before, but he always forgives me because he loves us." I didn't want to, but when I heard these words, I couldn't stand it and cried. Tiffany walked around the island, hugged me, and started crying herself. "Sorry, I'm just emotional this week. You know how it is. Look at us, stupid girls. Finish your breakfast, and I'll take you to school." We hugged a little more, then wiped our tears and got ready to start the day. After I dropped Tiffany off, I called my work and told them I would be working from home today. I then sent a text message to my husband telling him I was going home to work. For the first time since that terrible day, I just want him to know. I was surprised that he didn't stay late in the morning to come with me to look at my work computer. I cleaned up the kitchen and then logged into the laptop. It wasn't locked, and I was fine with that. As I started my daily work, I wondered if there was a tracker here so it could keep track of what I was doing. I also wondered if he was connecting to the camera in front of me and looking at me right now. At one point, I called Katie at the office to forward me some work notes. I was actually having a pretty productive day and was feeling a little better about putting everything on the back burner when I heard the doorbell ring. "Stephanie Stevens?" "Yes. How can I help you?" "I'm sorry you were served." Handing over the envelope, he turned and walked away. Oh God, I can't believe this is happening. I hold the envelope in my shaking hands, tears streaming down my face. I have to talk to him. I have to stop him from leaving me. I'm so scared of what I've done. I've destroyed our family. My daughter will be distraught too. I avoided calling my mother. I didn't want to drag her into this mess. It's my fault, although I should talk to someone. I can't stand it anymore. I'm having a nervous breakdown. I know this is a waste of time, but I need to talk to Mark. I grab my phone and dial his number. My hands are shaking so much. Tears are streaming down my face. "Hello?" "Mark. Mark, you answered?" "Thank God, Mark. I received the documents. Please don't leave me. Please, please." "Stephanie, calm down, okay? Listen to me. Tiffany will be home soon. I need you to pull yourself together. Tomorrow is the weekend, so she doesn't have to go to school. Call your mother and see if she can watch her tonight so we can talk." "Hello? Can you hear me?" Yes, I hear you. I'm sorry. I'll do it. You'll come home, right?" "I'll come." "Mom, it's me. Can I bring Tiffany this evening?" "Mark and I need to talk." "You're crying, honey. Oh my God, what happened? Are you two okay?" "Mom, please. No questions right now. We can discuss this another time. I'll bring her right after school, okay?" "Okay, honey, see you soon." When Tiffany returned home, I pulled myself together to some extent. I told her I was taking her to her grandma's tonight so Mark and I could talk for a while. She asked me again if everything was okay, and I told her everything would be just fine. She's a smart girl, and I know Tiffany didn't really buy it, but she didn't push it. When I got to my mom's house, she greeted us at the door, and I could smell cooking pasta, one of Tiffany's favorite foods. A minute later, my dad met us at the door, gave Tiffany a big hug, and led her into the house. My mom looked at me with concern but didn't ask any more questions. On the way back, I wondered if Mark had talked to his mom about our situation. I know that now that he doesn't see her as often. He talks to her on the phone quite often. She lives a few hours away, but he always wants to make sure she's okay after her father's death. I was surprised when I pulled into the driveway and realized Mark was already home. In the driveway, I quickly gathered my things and tried to get out of the car, even forgetting to unfasten my seatbelt. I burst into the house screaming his name and headed to the kitchen, throwing my cell phone and purse on the countertop. Mark was sitting there in front of the computer, I guess checking on me today to make sure I was on good behavior. Before I could get out a word, tears were already streaming from my eyes. He said, "Sit down, Stephanie. Mark told me to go on the computer and turn off contacts on Facebook and any other apps or sites while he watched." He stood up, opened the refrigerator, took out a bottle of wine, then took out 2 glasses and poured half a glass into each. "Stephanie, let me speak, okay? Let me say it all, and then you can say your part." "Okay, Mark, I'll listen to everything you say." "Stephanie, I took time off from work after our little situation, and I actually went to a lawyer and talked. I was so angry and sad at the same time. At that moment, I was sure that I no longer wanted to be married and wanted to get a divorce." "Oh, Mark, please, I don't want a divorce. Let me try to fix this." "Stephanie, let me finish. As I told you last night, when I read what you had on your computer, 1,000 thoughts ran through my head. How long does this affair last? Does she love him? What did I do to deserve this? I had no idea who you were. You are no longer the same woman I was married to for many years. Then I saw you there, exposing your body to this man, a body that was dear to me and only me, and yes, I know you didn't have sex with it. That's what you say, but that doesn't mean the pain is any less." Mark paused, then took a deep breath. "I am proud of the fact that I am the man who captured your heart. I am proud that you are my wife. When I married you, we were no longer 2 people. We became one person sharing ideological values. So, like I said, I filed for divorce. Next, I had a little time to think, and I want to talk about my current mood." He paused again and took a sip. I wanted to say something, but he raised his finger to silence me. "Even though my thinking has changed a little, Stephanie, the legal separation remains in effect. I need you to understand the seriousness of what you've done." Pushing his chair back a little, Mark continued speaking. "But for my part, I'm not moving out. We'll stay in separate rooms. I don't feel like there could be intimacy between us at the moment. I would hope that you would agree that not much needs to change in this house for now. We don't want to upset our daughter any more than we probably already have. I don't think you need to humiliate yourself in front of Tiffany, our family, or our friends by going into detail. However, I don't intend to be the bad guy here. You will make it absolutely clear to everyone that our problems are not my doing." "Mark, can you tell me?" "I'm not quite finished yet, but okay. I'm listening to you." "Mark, I promise you that I will do everything to make it up to you, and I will never talk to Hunter again. Please don't divorce me. I want to go to counseling, and I hope you will come with me, too. Mark, will you be seeing other women now that we've broken up?" Unable to hold back any longer, I broke down and began to cry, dropping my head in my hands. "Stephanie, that's not the point. I have no intention of dating. If anything changes, I will be honest with you. I support the idea of you talking to a therapist. I just don't know if I'm ready for this myself. You humiliated me at that moment. You cuckolded me. If treating you like a princess and putting you on a pedestal has made you believe that I am weak, you are sadly mistaken. I will not tolerate disrespect from you. No, Mark, you are not weak. I don't know what came over me. I'm bad. I'm weak. I sent a short transcript of your affair with this character Hunter to his wife via Facebook. It's not fair that she's more deceived than I am. I will leave everything as it is, without further contact. They can figure out their own situation. I really appreciate your honesty about his call the other day. But there will be no contact from now on. Am I clear?" "Yes, Mark." "What do we tell Tiffany?" "We'll sit down with Tiffany on Saturday and talk about this rationally. We'll explain to her that this is no different from her being angry at us. Then we give her the opportunity to go to her room while she thinks about her thoughts. You and I are no different. We need to be in different rooms to think. We both love her with all our hearts, and always will. You can tell her that we are having problems with our friendship right now. My mind was racing. I had a million thoughts. The thought of us being legally separated made me sick. Seeing the pain on my husband's face, I saw tears in his eyes. I was worried about how our daughter and families would take it. I even felt deeply concerned about a family I never knew, Hunter's family. Even though I knew it was Hunter's doing, I played my part. I finished my glass of wine and stood up. I wanted to ask Mark if he wanted me to cook him something for dinner. I felt strange, dizzy, nauseous. My vision blurred. "Stephanie, tell me, are you okay, Stephanie?" I was lying on the couch. Mark was above me, and I heard him calling my name. My eyes fluttered as I focused on his face and could hear his words. Yes, I'm fine." When Mark heard what I was saying, he left me for a moment. I was trying to sit up when he returned. "Stephanie, lie still for a minute." He helped lay my head back on the pillow, then placed another pillow under my feet and held a cold compress from the kitchen in his hand. He placed the compress on my forehead and held it there with his hand. "What is hurting you? You fainted? Just relax. I carried you to the sofa." "I'm fine, Mark. Thank you." The wine probably had an effect on me. To be honest, I haven't eaten anything lately and haven't slept well. "You scared the crap out of me. I'll be right back." This time he returned with a glass of grapefruit juice. "Here, sit down and drink this slowly. When you're okay, I'll make us something to eat." Slowly sitting up, then finishing my drink, I handed him the glass and then started crying. "Look at how you care about me and how I treated you. I don't deserve you." "Enough of that. We both had a rough day. Just relax for a few minutes." After a while, I felt better, got up and went to the kitchen to see what he was doing. Mark looked at me and smiled, then placed a bowl of hot tomato soup and a grilled cheese sandwich in front of me. I smiled back. Neither of us said a word. He sat down too, and we both ate in silence. After dinner, I washed the dishes, Mark went to watch TV, and I decided to take a shower. While the water cascaded over me, I thought about the events of today. I had to save my marriage. I was determined to talk to a therapist. We need to get to the bottom of what caused all the problems. I couldn't come to terms with the fact that I had caused this man so much pain. But when I needed him, he was there to take care of me. After finishing my shower, I went down to the basement in my pajamas to watch TV with him. I kept my distance and sat on the opposite end of the sofa. We were sitting there in silence, watching intently and lost in our thoughts when I heard him speak. "Do you feel better?" I sat for a moment, thinking, before answering. "Still feeling a little weak. I hope you sleep in our bed tonight in case I need you. I don't expect you to touch me. I just thought it would be nice if you were there." Mark didn't answer. We watched TV for a long time. It was already late. Mark got up and turned it off. For some time he stood silently, staring at me. "How about I sleep in the next room tonight so I can hear you if you need me?" I stood behind him, following him up the stairs, croaking, "Thank you." I actually slept a little better that night. I don't know if it was because I was exhausted or because he was in the next room. I woke up to the smell of bacon and coffee. We sat down and had a fairly quiet breakfast together. I told Mark I would be doing the dishes and it was time for me to do laundry. His contribution to the conversation was that he was going to fill the hole in the wall in the office with plaster from the garage before we got Tiffany. I gather up Mark's laundry from last night and take it downstairs to load it. I took the t-shirt he was wearing last night, brought it to my face and smelled him. This subtle aroma had a calming effect on me for some reason. Around 11 o'clock, I told Mark that I was going to call my mom and tell her that we would be picking up Tiffany soon. He replied that he was also going to call his mother, as he did every Sunday. I was thinking about how this conversation might go today. We picked up Tiffany, and my mother looked at me questioningly. I just made a grimace of a smile. On the way to my mom's, Mark decided that we would talk to Tiffany in the car on the way back. There's no point in keeping her in the dark about this any longer. The conversation went basically the same way as Mark and I had discussed earlier in our conversation. Mark did most of the talking, and I tried my best not to cry. Trying my best to control myself, I blot my eyes a couple of times. Interestingly, he did not mention that he had filed for divorce. Tiffany sat silently as we pulled into the driveway and stopped. She jumped out of the car and ran to her room. I followed her out, walked to her closed bedroom door, and knocked carefully. "Tiffany, can I come in?" No answer. I went in anyway. She was lying face down on the bed and crying. I hugged her and cried too. "What happened, Mom? Why is Dad so angry?" "Oh, honey, I was stupid and made a big mistake, but I'm trying to fix it." "Don't worry, honey. Daddy loves you so much. I'll leave you alone for a while. Come out when you're ready." Shortly before dinner, I told Mark that I needed to go grocery shopping. "I'll ask Tiffany if she needs anything." "Yes." "And is there anything you would like me to buy?" "I think she's angry with me. I'll ask her if you don't mind." "Tiffany, your mom is going grocery shopping. Do you need anything?" "Yes, Daddy. I want us to go shopping with her. Let's go," she said, leaving her room. "Oh, okay then." The three of us went, and at the supermarket, Tiffany did everything she could to try to engage us in conversation. Mark kept the conversation short and to the point, but did everything he could to calm his daughter down. He was cordial with Tiffany. He spoke to me harshly and inexpressively. I felt terrible about the effect it had on Tiffany. On Sunday evening, Mark went to sleep downstairs again. Monday morning was the same as on previous weekdays. When Tiffany and I got up, he had already left for work. On days like today, when I worked in the office, I always liked to arrive an hour before everyone else. When I pulled into the parking lot, Mark's car was there. He was sitting in the parking lot and waiting for me. When I got out of the car, Mark got out of his. "You thought I forgot? I'm here to look through your computer." He spat out these words coldly. I was shaking like a leaf, not that I had anything to hide. I was just shocked by his coldness. Once in the office, he stood behind me. I nervously entered the password, saying it out loud. "Here you go, Mark. Look, I haven't cleared my history or anything like that for a long time." When I looked up at him, he was looking at me, not at the computer. He had a very strange expression on his face, as if he was embarrassed. But this shouldn't be the case. He had every right to doubt me. Mark then walked away and left, without saying a word. I sat and cried for a while. Then I heard Katie come into the office. She immediately realized that I was crying and asked me what happened. I've never been one to air out my laundry at work. I really considered her a work friend, but at that moment I couldn't stand it, and told her, without going into details, that Mark and I had problems. She was a helpful listener, and it was nice to be able to talk to someone about it. We shared a tea break in the cafeteria, and then began our day. During lunch, I called my mom, and we had the same vague conversation about my personal life. In both conversations with Katie and my mom, I made it very clear that Mark had every right to be angry. That day, when I came home from work, I sat down at the computer and looked for a marriage therapist. I ended up making an appointment that same week. When I had a moment alone with Mark that evening, I told him that I had made an appointment and what the dates were. He looked at me, acknowledging what I was saying, but didn't say a word. I hoped that these meetings would help me understand why I did what I did. Also to reach out to Mark with the hope that he might come to one of the meetings. Several things surprised me in my first meeting with my therapist. Firstly, the therapist was somewhat similar to Mark's mother. She introduced herself as Margaret, and I almost immediately felt at ease. In her office, we sat at a round table. She offered me tea or coffee and immediately began asking me about the history of my relationship, how we met, what initially attracted us to each other, how the relationship developed. She asked about our current situation, including dealing with extended family, children, work, and daily stressors. I told her all the details of my interactions with Hunter and Mark's repression and legal separation. When I returned home, I felt emotionally and physically drained. Mark and Tiffany were in the basement watching TV. I poked my head into the room and told them I was tired and going to bed early. Mark looked at me and asked if I had eaten. I told him I wasn't hungry and went to take a hot shower before going to bed. As I got out of the shower and put on my robe, I heard them talking in the kitchen. Unable to make out what they were saying, I lay down on the bed and opened the book to read a little. My daughter walked into the bedroom with a tray containing a bowl of stew and a bun. "Daddy says you should eat, so we heated up some stew for you." Once again, I felt overwhelmed by this kind gesture and burst into tears. My daughter sat with me while I ate and asked how my meeting went. I wasn't exactly sure if she knew I was in marriage therapy or what it even entailed. I smiled and told her that everything went very well. She kissed me on the cheek, told me she had homework to do, and left the room. When I finished, I took my dishes to the kitchen. I heard the TV downstairs, so I grabbed my cell phone from the counter and texted Mark, "Thank you for the stew. I love you." After returning the phone to charge, I went to bed. The rest of the week went much the same. On Wednesday, I decided to work from home and cook roast beef for dinner. Tiffany and I did all the talking. Mark was mostly silent. She asked if she could invite one of her friends to come and stay for the weekend. I just looked at Mark and sat in silence, wondering what he would say. We knew full well that whenever she had a girlfriend over, they would retire to the basement playroom for a sleepover. Without any hesitation, he said, "Of course, honey, whatever makes you happy." My first thought was that this was Tiffany's way of pushing Dad from downstairs back into our bedroom. Will this work? Maybe my husband will agree to come back to our bed. The next day after work, I had another therapy meeting with Margaret. We talked again about Hunter, how he worked with me, and the flirtatiousness between us. She asked about my relationship with my father and the previous men I dated before my husband. I said that Mark was a lot like my father, that he treated me like a princess. I also said that I dated a lot, but was not promiscuous. Before Mark, I only had one serious boyfriend. This guy turned out to be a real player, sleeping with all the women behind my back. Margaret was very curious and asked me a lot of questions about my first boyfriend. I told her how he always knew how to say exactly the right thing. He knew exactly what I wanted to hear. He was mysterious. He never talked much about himself, but he knew everything about me, my likes and dislikes. He never idolized me more than himself, but if I changed my makeup or hairstyle, he intuitively immediately understood it and complimented me. Whenever any other boys showed interest in me, he always told me that they just wanted sex. They told me that he cheated with other women, but I never believed them. Then one day I caught him, and that was the end. Margaret asked me if I saw any similarities between my ex-boyfriend and Hunter. I thought about it for a long time, and then I said, "Yes, that's right. You're right." She then switched gears and asked me what it was like being treated like a princess by my father, if it was stressful. To be honest, I told her that it bothered me. I always felt that I might not live up to his expectations. "And when Mark treated you like a princess, isn't it similar?" Margaret retorted. "I think it's the same thing. I was afraid that one day Mark, would wake up and decide that he didn't like what he saw. Now, I'm here. Mark doesn't like what he sees, and my father would be just as ashamed." I started crying, and Margaret handed me a napkin. She got up, made us a cup of tea, and left me alone with my thoughts for a good 5 minutes. "Margaret, I'm so afraid that I've lost Mark. He doesn't touch me, and we hardly talk. I'm so scared. He means everything to me." "Don't worry, Stephanie, we are working on it. Ask him again if he will come to me. I know you don't want to talk about it, but if things get worse, the court will require his presence." That's enough for today. We'll talk again next week. Maro. My daughter Tiffany and I were sitting and eating lasagna that Stephanie had made earlier in the week. I couldn't help but notice that my daughter was especially quiet this evening when she suddenly burst into tears and said, "Dad, 2 wrongs don't make a right." "Of course not, honey. Why do you ask?" "Because I don't know what Mom did to hurt you, but your silence really hurts her. She cries all the time. We're talking, I don't want to hurt her in any way. Stephanie, I'm home. Hey, Mom, we're having lasagna. Will you join us?" "I'm not hungry." "Yes, of course. Good. How was the therapy?" "That was good, Mark. Thanks for asking." Tiffany continued to talk about how she invited her friend over for the weekend and how excited she was. After dinner, when we girls were washing the dishes instead of putting them in the dishwasher, Mark disappeared somewhere. Tiffany made a phone call, probably to her girlfriends, and disappeared into her room. I went downstairs in search of Mark and sat down on the other end of the sofa, keeping my distance. He looked up and asked me if I wanted to watch something on TV. I said that I was fine with whatever he wanted to watch. While Mark was switching channels, trying to find something to watch, Tiffany came down and sat between us and asked if we could watch a movie together. It was a cute movie and I really enjoyed it. Then Tiffany and I got up to go to bed. The three of us said goodnight to each other. I looked at Mark and our eyes met for a moment, but we did not exchange a word. I took a bath and freshened up before bed and then lay down to read for a while. After about an hour, I got up and just put on my robe and nothing else. She quietly crept along the corridor and checked where her daughter was. Tiffany was sleeping. Then I quietly went downstairs to see if Mark was sleeping. He was lying on the sofa, sleeping, wearing only his underpants, illuminated only by the light from the TV. I dropped my robe to the floor and stood naked in front of him, staring at him, knelt down and put my hand on his stomach. Then I moved my hand down. Then, to my surprise, Mark suddenly jerked and his hand grabbed my wrist. I heard the word no. He sat up and looked at me with a shocked expression on his face. I was humiliated. I jumped back, grabbed my robe, put it on, and quickly ran upstairs to my room. I locked myself in the bathroom, sat on the floor with my back to the door, and cried. "Stephanie, Steph, please open the door." "Please go away," I whispered back. After sitting there for several minutes, I didn't hear anything, so I got up, opened the door, and looked outside. Mark sat on the bed and waited for me. I slowly walked towards him, covering my eyes with my hands. "I'm so ashamed that you consider me a moral monster that you don't even want to touch me anymore." He put his hand on my shoulder and pulled my hands away from my eyes. "Stephanie, I'm not ready yet. I just need some time to think about everything. I don't want to send mixed messages through my behavior, and I don't want to take advantage of you. Listen, I'm going to visit my mom this weekend and just be alone for a few days to clear my head. I'm emptying out the basement, which opens the door for Tiffany to have her little weekend." I covered my eyes with my hands again and cried. "Look, don't cry, okay? I'm going to go to therapy with you. Call her and let her know." I continued to cry. "Okay, Mark, thank you, I'll do it, but please, can you at least hug me?" We both stood up and he hugged me. After a moment, he released me, looked at me, and smiled. He said, "We'll talk later," and left. I climbed into bed and eventually fell asleep. The next morning, I was in the kitchen preparing breakfast. I heard Mark slip into the bedroom, probably to pack his suitcase, when I heard the doorbell ring. Tiffany ran down the corridor shouting, "I'll open it." Then I hear teenage girls screaming in the hall. Tiffany led her friend Megan into the kitchen. I asked if she would join us for breakfast. Agreeing, they carried her bags to the playroom and then joined me. Mark came in, exchanged an awkward smile with me, and sat down to eat. If it weren't for the girls' chatter, the awkward silence between us would have been deafening. After breakfast, the girls ran to the basement playroom, and Mark helped me wash the dishes. He told me that he would be home on Sunday evening, and that if necessary, I could contact him by calling his mother. Then he went downstairs and said goodbye to the girls. I was waiting for him at the door in the corridor. As he started to leave, Mark paused for a moment with his suitcase, and we stared awkwardly at each other. Then he said, "Okay, see you on Sunday," and left. The girls and I ordered pizza and then watched the movie Chick, which took my mind off my problems for a while. The next day, we girls went shopping. We grabbed supplies to bake cookies and ended our Saturday with board games. I left a message with Margaret saying that Mark was available for the next meeting, but I did not hear back from her. All I kept thinking was that if therapy didn't work, I would lose him forever. I know I brought this on myself, and my daughter is suffering too, and it's all my fault. How could I be so selfish and stupid? I wondered if Mark had told his mother what a disappointment his soon-to-be ex-wife had been. On Sunday morning, I received a message from Margaret that she was looking forward to meeting Mark and seeing us on Monday as planned. My stomach was doing somersaults when I picked up the phone and decided to call Mark and his mom. I wasn't sure how I would be received. Hello? Catherine, this is Stephanie. Is Mark free? Hi, honey. It's good to hear from you. Wait a minute and I'll call him. Oh God, she doesn't know. He never said anything. Mark, I'm sorry to bother you. I just wanted to see if you'd be home for dinner and to tell you that we have an appointment at the therapist's office tomorrow, if that's still okay with you. A long pause of silence. Yes. Yes, Stephanie, I'll see you at dinner. Then we'll talk. Okay, Mark. Bye. Megan was picked up by her dad later that day, giving Tiffany and I some time together before Mark came home for dinner. I asked her if she had a good weekend with her friend, and she assured me that she had. Then, out of the blue, she asked me if I missed my dad. I told her that of course I do. I always miss him when he is away. I love your father with all my heart. We hugged each other tightly. Why don't we take a walk together, and then when we get back, you can help me prepare a nice dinner for him. It was nice to spend some girl time together, just the two of us. When we returned, she helped me prepare a delicious roast with potatoes and carrots. Mark showed up just as we were taking the roast out of the oven. Tiffany met him at the door, hugged him tightly, and told him we had cooked a nice dinner together. Mark reached into his luggage and pulled out a card and a book with a note attached to it. Look, Mom, Grandma gave me a gift card and gave you a book. I read the card attached to the book. For my daughter, here's a book I read. You might like it. Love you. Come with Mark next time and visit me. Tears in my eyes. Mark, can I talk to you for a minute? Thank you for not telling your mother everything. Stephanie, this is just our business for now, okay? Let me see what we're having for dinner. I'm hungry. Mark. I was really apprehensive about meeting with Stephanie's therapist, but she put me at ease by seeming like a congenial person. She told me that she liked to work on a first-name basis and introduced herself as Margaret. She thought it would be best if we spent 45 minutes talking to get to know each other better. Then Stephanie can do her session on her own afterwards. She asked me about my interpretation of events and then informed me that the stories were identical to the ones Stephanie had interpreted a few days earlier. As predicted, she asked me how I was feeling, and I replied, angry. Margaret then essentially told me that anger is an easier pill to swallow. A general emotion of disappointment, sadness, humiliation, and fear of the future. We discussed the difference between regret and repentance. I agreed with her that I felt all these emotions, and I truly believe that Stephanie feels remorse. I told her how much I had idolized my wife before this incident as a lover, wife, mother, and friend. Margaret paused and considered my statement for a moment, then stated, I know it seemed like your wife had it all together, but her personality weakness is to stand up to someone who puts her on a pedestal. She's weaker than you think, Mark. She craves your approval and admiration just as much as you crave respect. We continued our conversation and time flew by. That's enough for today, Mark. Thank you. I'd like to talk to Stephanie for a bit. When I walked out into the waiting room, Stephanie looked scared. I informed her that I would see her at home and start dinner with Tiffany. We were both driving our own cars, okay? I needed time to think on my own. Okay, Mark, see you at home. Stephanie. When I came home after the session, I smelled a delicious dinner being prepared. Mark and Tiffany were in the kitchen, talking and laughing. It warmed my heart to hear them laugh after yet another grueling session that exposed my damaged soul. I'm standing in the hall, taking off my heels, glad that I'm home. I looked into my old office and, to my shock, saw our laptop back on the table. I walked into the kitchen and joined my loved ones, and we had a really nice dinner together. I thought maybe after Tiffany left for the evening, we could talk about today's meeting, but Mark went back to the basement and crawled back into his shell. I went to the office, returned the laptop to the kitchen table, and went to bed early to read. When I woke up in the morning and smelled the coffee, I got out of bed and freshened up before heading downstairs. On the way, I knocked on Tiffany's door and told her to get up, and then headed to the kitchen. As usual, Mark made coffee before heading to work. I poured a cup and then walked back into the hall, about to yell upstairs for my daughter to get her ass in order. Then the door to the bathroom on the first floor in the corridor opened, and I screamed, "Mark, you scared the hell out of me. What are you still doing at home?" "I'm on my way. I just wanted to talk to you before I leave." He walked past me and poured himself a second cup of coffee. "Stephanie, you shouldn't have brought the computer back to the kitchen." He saw that I was about to speak and raised his hand to stop me. "Stephanie, I felt stupid the other day at your work when I asked you to open your computer. I feel stupid every day watching you at home. But it's not nearly as stupid, humiliating, and sad as the day I caught you with this man online. I know we need to talk to move forward one way or another, and I'm making that happen. I have to go to work. We can discuss this further at our next therapy meeting." Just at that moment, Tiffany came bouncing down the stairs. "Hey, Dad, you're home. I'm heading out, honey. Have a nice day. I'll see you when I get home." Nothing much happened until the end of the week. Thursday finally arrived. Margaret went out into the reception room where Mark and I were sitting, but not together, but across a chair. Just before she walked in, I thought, this is awkward, but at least he's sitting next to me and not on chairs across the room. Margaret said that if everything was okay, I would like to talk to Mark first, alone, and then together. I smiled at her. Mark stood up and entered the room. I took a magazine to read. Mark. Margaret offered me a cup of coffee, which I accepted and sat down at the round table. She asked how I was feeling and how the week had gone. I told her about the highlights. I told her about visiting my mother for the weekend. I also talked to her about how my daughter mentioned that mommy was hurting and that two wrongs would be wrong. Told her about the laptop, and she asked me why I moved it, and I explained exactly what I told Stephanie. I also told her about the incident on the first floor when Stephanie tried to get intimate and I stopped her. "Mark, do you want your wife? Do you love her?" "Of course I want to, but I'm trying to do what's right. I'm trying to do what's right for all three of us. Mark, you understand that no matter whether you stay with your wife or leave her, you two will have to talk, maybe argue. I know you carry around this emotional blanket called anger. Mark, your daughter is not always around. There are times when you two can talk. Stephanie knows she hurt you, Mark. Are you afraid that if you talk to her, you will get angry, that your anger will hurt her? Maybe you love her so much that you don't want to hurt her. This is just food for thought. Let's talk about how you first met and what attracted you to her." I told her about our dating life, when we first met and how I was in love with Stephanie from the first date. I told her that Stephanie is loving, beautiful, warm, smart, understanding, and everything I want in a woman. Margaret then asked me to describe a sweet behavior that Stephanie doesn't even know she has, but that you notice in her. It was easy when she's really concentrating, or sometimes when she's stressed, she wiggles her nose. It's so cute. Who is your wife for you, Mark? Stephanie is my wife, my mother. She is my lover, my best friend. I wonder if friendship shouldn't be a little higher on your list. She seems to have been starved for your attention even before this incident that brought us all together. Mark, could you please ask Stephanie to come here? For now, I'd like to talk to both of you. Stephanie Mark came out into the reception area and asked me to come in. I don't think I've ever been so nervous in my entire life, not even when we got married. Margaret greeted me with a smile and said, "I'd like to talk a little about the discussion we had last week." As the three of us sat at the table, Mark kept his eyes on Margaret. Margaret started talking about flirting. It is known that men are more motivated by sexualization and visual content. This changes their perception of what flirting involves and causes them to be more assertive in their approach. I describe male flirting as trolling. Most men will throw bait here and there without any specific goal, hoping that someone will fall for their flirting. Women flirt to make friends and show their femininity, to prove to themselves that they are still desirable. Flirting for a woman increases self-esteem. Everyone flirts, but in slightly different ways. Mark stood up to pour himself a cup of coffee, and Margaret was silent for a moment until he sat back down. As Mark's wife, I knew him well enough to know that he was worried and wanted to know the meaning of it all. I wrung my hands under the table and looked pleadingly straight at Margaret. "Excuse me, Margaret, but does this make sense? We all know what happened." What I'm saying is, Mark, now I'm not trying to defend Stephanie in any way. What she did was a serious breach of trust. It's about something else. In my business, we encounter these characters from time to time. I call them poachers by Mariegi. They find pleasure in seducing another man's wife. They're very good at what they do, Mark. Like, for example, you just tell your wife that she's pretty. Well, the poacher says to your wife, "I love you in this blue dress. You always look good in blue." Hunter was targeting her, your wife specifically. He remembers what she wears every day and what colors she chooses. Now I know what you're thinking, Mark. You constantly compliment your wife, and that's good. But these predators master the art of seduction. He will notice every type of makeup she puts on, how she wears it, what jewelry she wears. They are very specific in their compliments, trying to penetrate her soul. They want to develop in her a disdainful attitude towards her husband, but they will treat this very subtly. If he said something directly derogatory, your wife would realize it and he would lose touch with her, so to speak. So, what you're saying is that this character Hunter is targeting my wife to seduce her. Stephanie, describe a couple of situations that we discussed last week and to which I brought your attention. Please tell Mark what you told me, Stephanie. I nervously cleared my throat and wiped a tear from the corner of my eye. For the first time since we sat down, Mark looked me straight in the eyes. Well, a long time ago, when Hunter still worked in my office, you know how much I like to get to work early. Well, one morning when I was leaving, I noticed that you forgot to take out the trash. So I drove the car back to the driveway, went into the garage, and took out the trash. I really didn't think anything of it until I got to work and was a little late with my usual morning routine. At that moment, Hunter came through the door and spoke to me, as well as to Katie. Now that my daily routine was a little different and everyone was talking to me, I was a little annoyed. Hunter immediately asked me if I was okay. I casually said that I was a little out of my routine because I had to take out the trash this morning that my husband had forgotten about. Hunter immediately said, "Well, that was irresponsible of him." Remembering that moment after Hunter's comment, I immediately became angry with you, Mark. Now I realize that I should have actually been annoyed by his statement. At this moment, Margaret intervened in the conversation. You see, Mark, although your wife wasn't really upset with you, she realized that you simply forgot. Hunter took advantage of this moment. He knew that Stephanie was irritated and needed morning peace. By exploiting her irritation, he subtly brought her displeasure down on you, Mark. Notice how very effectively her bad mood was made out to be your fault, Mark. Come on, Stephanie, now tell Mark the part where Hunter defames his wife and what he said to you in the restaurant. I never really asked him many questions about his personal life, although he asked a lot about mine, Mark. I guess I was flattered that someone showed interest in me as a simple old housewife. Now I really remember after talking to Margaret in the last session, Hunter did mention at one point that his wife traveled a lot and they didn't have an active sex life, and he wondered if she might be having an affair. Margaret is absolutely sure that this is all just a lie that he spun to try to influence me. Mark's eyes were now more sad than angry, and he brought me back to the aforementioned conversation in the restaurant. Oh yeah, one day Katie, Hunter, and I went to lunch. I said you were going to take me out to dinner at that burger place we liked, and Hunter said if he took me out to dinner, he'd take me to that new piano bar with music, wine, and dancing. Again, I never understood, but Margaret said it was his way of humiliating the restaurant we loved to go to and making me feel like life with him would be so much more luxurious. So, to summarize, Mark, I submit that yes, Stephanie made a serious mistake here, which we all agree she repents of. As every married couple does over time, we end up saying good things to each other. A wife may say that her husband is handsome, but she does not say what exactly she is talking about that makes her make this statement at that very moment. For example, "This is my favorite suit that you wear. This blue tie matches it perfectly." Or the husband might say, "I love the way you twitch your nose. I find it so charming." I looked at Margaret and then looked at Mark. My dad often said that I was twitching my nose. I'm still twitching my nose. Mark told that to Margaret. She stood up and said, "Okay, that's enough for today, you two. I'm giving you homework. Talk to each other." Mark and I walked out to our cars in the parking lot together. I asked Mark if he would call Tiffany and tell her not to eat anything, and I would take care of dinner for us. He smiled and said, "Why don't you call her and let me take care of dinner this time? We'll meet at home." Tiffany seemed extremely excited to see us this evening and asked if we had a good day. Mark hugged her, kissed the top of her head, and said, "Yes, honey, we should eat while it's hot." After dinner, Mark suggested that the three of us go for a walk. Tiffany immediately rolled her eyes. He added that we could go to that ice cream shop a couple blocks away. This immediately changed her attitude, and she hurried to get ready. I looked at Mark and smiled, saying, "That's a great idea. I think I'll change and put on jeans." "Stephanie, isn't that dress you're wearing the same dress you wore to the Christmas party last year? You look amazing in this dress. It's one of my favorites." Mark pulled me back and felt my face turn red. "Yes, this is—" "Mark, thanks for noticing. Should I stay in it?" He stood up and, leaving the kitchen, said, "Well, jeans are probably more comfortable to walk around in. And if these are the jeans I'm thinking of, I like the way your ass jiggles when you walk in them." I stood there dumbfounded. Had I heard him correctly? A wide smile appeared on my face, and I rushed to the bedroom to change clothes. As we walked down the street, Tiffany kept up the conversation. We turn the corner onto the next street. The sidewalk narrows. I take Tiffany's hand and walk ahead of Mark, one foot in front of the other, emphasizing the rotation of my hips. When we reached the ice cream shop, we sat down. For some reason, I felt nervous, almost like I was on a date. During the conversation, I told Tiffany that we would call Grandma when we got back and thank her for the gifts. I told Mark that I thought maybe we should take that office space that's no longer needed and turn it into a real bedroom that your mother could use. I was nervous about bringing up that room, but I knew we had to change something. It was slowly becoming a sanctuary for my mistake. "What do you think, honey, if we let her know that the room is available to her any time she wants to stay?" "That's a very nice gesture, Stephanie, since we're talking about grandparents." "I was thinking maybe we should call your parents and ask if Tiffany could stay with them tomorrow so we can have some more time to talk." "That's a good idea. You two should talk," Tiffany said with a smug smile on her face and continued licking her ice cream. When we got home, Tiffany called her grandmother and we both thanked her for the gifts. I didn't bring up the topic of a spare bedroom, leaving it up to her son. With Mark in the basement and Stephanie retreating to her room, I took a moment to call my parents. Surprisingly, my dad answered the call. "Dad, I know you always treated me like a princess and I could do no wrong, but I'm not perfect, Daddy. I am afraid and have always been afraid of disappointing you. I know that you are not perfect, honey. No one is, although for me, you will always be perfect, my little girl. I love you." "I love you too, Dad." He handed the phone to Mom, and we talked about how he and Dad would pick Tiffany up after school tomorrow, which she happily agreed to. After hanging up, I told Mark I was going to take a shower and he could join me. After taking a shower on my own, I was full of hope and pulled on some underwear. I lay and waited for him for a very long time, but he never appeared. The next day at work, I got into a conversation with Katie. It turned out that we really had a lot in common. We even read the same books. She told me a little about her upcoming wedding. At that moment, I thought that she would probably make a good friend and not just a colleague. I asked her if she would like to come over one afternoon. She readily agreed and said that we would definitely have it ready for next week. I returned to my desk to work. I was excited to talk to Mark today, especially after the disappointment of last night. And then I got even more disappointed. A text message from Mark saying that he would be an hour late getting home, that he needed to stop by the lawyer's office. I got nervous. By 1 p.m., I told Katie I was going to take the rest of the day off. On the way home, I stopped and bought some good red wine. When I got home, I got busy preparing a delicious meal for Mark and me. At that moment, I had no appetite and felt nauseous from anxiety. Dinner in the oven. I decided to put on a beautiful dress and wait for Mark to arrive. I opted for a black 3/4-length Chevage bodycon dress, black stockings and heels. I had no idea why Mark was in the lawyer's office or what we were going to talk about, but I wanted to do my best. I can't remember the last time I wore a sexy dress at home for him. If I was going to fall, I was going to fall fighting for his love. Mark finally arrived. I was so nervous, I was shaking when I met him at the door. He smiled and said he was sorry he was late, and we stood there for a minute, awkwardly looking at each other. I wanted so desperately to kiss him, but I thought it wouldn't be taken well under the circumstances. "I'm glad you're home. I got a bottle of red wine. Would you like to pour us a glass? I'll check how dinner's going." "Of course, Stephanie. By the way, you look great. You're wearing the necklace I gave you when we first started dating." "Yes, Mark. Thank you. It's so nice of you to remember." We sat down calmly and had dinner together. I said I liked the wine. Mark agreed and praised the food. To say the atmosphere was tense would be an understatement. Taking a sip of wine, he smiled at me and laughed. "I don't understand why you laugh at me." "You're nervous, your nose is twitching. I find it cute." She shyly raised her hand to her nose and then giggled like a little schoolgirl. "Stephanie, leave the dishes, fill our glasses with wine. Join me in the living room, let's talk." I nervously followed him into the living room. This was the moment of truth. We sat sideways on the sofa, facing each other. "Stephanie, I know I've been sullen and quiet for a while, but you really shocked me, and I was so hurt and disappointed. I thought about many things like this house and what a home is. I thought about the good and bad in our relationship. Mark, I hurt you and I will never be able to forgive myself. Our original relationship is broken and I can't fix it. Can we build something new from the love we share by taking all the pieces of what is great about our relationship? Please note, I love you. Well, home is where we live, you, Stephanie, and Tiffany. That makes it home. There is so much that I love about you, too much to give up on you. This evening I went to the lawyer's office to sign the revocation form. Get up, come here. I was shocked. I don't even know if I heard him correctly. I stood up almost automatically and walked over to stand between his spread legs as he moved forward to the edge of the sofa. Mark, did I hear you correctly? This time, tears of joy. Please say it again. Please tell me that everything will be fine. Steph, we have work to do, and we're not done with Margaret yet. But we will get there. We will get there together. Standing between his spread legs, he placed his hands on my stockings, caressing my thighs, and began to slide his hand under my short skirt, exposing the top of my knee socks as he lifted my skirt above my hips. I could see the hunger in his eyes as he looked at my black lace panties and flat bare tummy. I stood with my legs pressed tightly together. They began to tremble. Mark leaned forward and began to cover my bare stomach with bunny kisses. Mark looked into my eyes, then stood up, pushing my hair back, turning my head to the side. I felt his lips and hot breath on my neck. A shiver ran down my spine, and I heard him whisper, "I'm craving dessert. Feed me. I'm craving you." Then he pressed his lips to mine. My tongue gently slipped into his mouth. I felt petite against the background of his strong and masculine physique. I wrapped my arms around his neck and jumped up, wrapping my legs around his waist. Mark's hands immediately cupped my almost bare bottom, supporting me in his embrace. I looked into Mark's eyes and said, "Take me upstairs and let me express my gratitude to you for loving me tonight, and every night you want me." Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.